In the 3.17 expansion, GGG gave us a whole new Atlas passive tree, and with the Atlas passive tree came a new farming strategy called Boss Rush. Now, Boss Rush has become extremely popular, and it allowed players in trade leagues to generate a stupid amount of currency. Now, with anything in life, it's good to ask yourself, well, how can something be improved further? And with Boss Rush, the answer usually is just be faster. And so that's what I did. I came up with a build specifically made for boss rushing. And the current build you're seeing on your screen, is the fastest boss rusher that I've played all league. Hey guys, Sniz here, and in this video we're going to be going over my explosive concoction raider designed specifically for boss rushing. Yes, sadly this isn't a build that you can take in and do all content with. It's only designed for boss rush, and it's pretty damn good at it. So let's take a look. Initially, when thinking about a build specifically for boss rush, I kept going back to the idea of making a lab runner, and so I leveled a Pathfinder. But as I played the build, later on I realized that there are two big fundamental differences between lab runners and boss rushers. So the first big difference comes from the idea of sustained speed. Lab runners need to do multiple rooms, they need to fight a Zoro multiple times, and they need to be fast throughout the whole lab. That's often why lab runners play as Pathfinders, which give them flasks, and flasks make you fast. Now, boss rushers also need to be fast, but they only need to be fast up until the boss, and as soon as you reach the boss, the speed doesn't mean anything. And so often, if you're running a good map and a good build, you can reach the map boss even on a bad layout within 1 or 2 flask uses. So flask sustain is kind of a waste on a boss rusher. And that's why I decided to spec out of a Pathfinder for flask sustain and into a raider for more speed and damage for boss rushing. And the second big difference is mostly setup time and ramp. Lab runners have a lot of time to set up while the Zoro is still rising up out of the ground. They can switch gear, take out timeless jewels, change their main 6-link. They can put down TR ballistas, prelay TR pods. They can put down traps and mines, and as soon as you can interact with the Zoro, they one-shot him. Boss rushers don't have that setup time. As soon as you see the boss, you want to kill the boss as fast as you can. And so boss rushers can't afford to change gear, they can't afford to remove timeless jewels, and the core idea of killing the boss as fast as you can means more money is what you have to keep in mind. And so I decided to move away from skills such as TR, traps and mines, for skills with more immediate upfront damage, such as explosive concoction, for example. People often ask me whether this build uses self-chill to be this fast, and the answer is no. We don't use self-chill. To self-chill, you need to do a lot of things, and I don't think it's worth it for us. We're already really fast as is. We mainly get our speed from a juiced-up phase run, evasion stacking with Queen of the Forest, Raider Onslaught and Onslaught effect, flasks that are just rolled well, and then just other generic items that give us movement speed. If you are curious about the Atlas tree that I'm using or why I'm running Cemetery and Coves, a while ago I made a video going over everything in detail, and I'll leave that linked below in the description. So this is my level 95 Raider. So if we take a look at the passive tree, we come out up here from the Raider start, going through the Dex nodes, we grab some Reservation Efficiency with the Reservation Efficiency Mastery to help us fit in all of our auras. Then we use a Transcendent Spirit, which gives you movement speed per 10 allocated dex in radius. That's why we path this way and grab all the dex nodes that we can. And one more level, I do need to grab this node. It is slowing me down a little bit, but it's pretty hard to level when you're this squishy and you don't have any defenses. And then we go down for some projectile damage, some life, some attack speed, accuracy, and dex. Okay, we also grab this node over here for some life and evasion rating, and the spell suppression is nice, but it doesn't really do that much. And then we take the evasion mastery, which gives you grace reservation efficiency, because we do run grace in this build. We go up, we get some attack speed over here, life, crit chance, crit multi. Then we move out. I currently have both of these wheels. It is kind of hard to meet the stat requirements needed for this build. If you can fix it on your gear, you can free up these 2 points, but I still need them sadly. We'll go over the clusters later. Now, because I'm a raider, I have managed to cap spell suppression. I don't know how worth it is. You don't really take a lot of DPS, or you don't really take a lot of damage, I mean. So whether you want to cap spell suppression is up to you. I did manage to cap spell suppression, and so that means that I can take this mastery, which gives me 100% increased crit chance, which is really nice. Then I take a jewel socket over here. In a few levels, I do want to take these, but I doubt that I'll be able to get that high in level. It does feel bad losing the crit multi, crit chance, and then the crit multi from the mastery, but that's something you could think about getting. In here, we have a large thread of hope, which is really, really good. It gives us this node over here, which is a ton of damage and damage during flask effect. And because of our enduring mana flask, this is always active when fighting a boss. We grab this node over here for all res, crit chance, elemental damage. And this node up here, which gives you a ton of pen. Now, you could also think about grabbing this node over here for some more spell suppression and movement speed, but like I said, I'm already capped, so I don't feel like it's that worth taking that node. Then we go down. Again, Explosive Concoction is an attack. People often forget that. So this node does work with Explosive Concoction. It is a projectile attack skill, so it gives us a ton of crit chance and crit multi. Then over here, we grab some flask duration and flask effect. We path over for the flask duration up here. And on the mastery, we gain, we take flask effect. Then we take another node for evasion down here. This is for movement speed and cooldown recovery of movement skills. And then on the mastery, we take movement speed if you haven't been or if you haven't taken damage recently. This helps with the uptime of phase run, which we'll go over in a second. I mean, we can go over it now. So the core principle is you just want your phase rush or your phase run to have 100% uptime. You always want it to be active. Now, initially, I try to do that without linking it to an increased duration, and so I try to get cooldown in a few different places. It's really not that important, but this node is still worth taking because it does give movement speed and the mastery. But if you want to build something like this yourself, just keep in mind that you want 100% uptime on phase run. Okay, then some life over here. We do go for point blank. It is kind of scary to stand so close to an enemy boss when you're this squishy, but if you kill the boss in under a second, usually you're safe. So we do kind of focus on being close to an enemy to deal more damage. And then we take the mark node down here for Culling Strike. And on the mastery, we take 25% increase effect of our marks. So that's the base tree. For our clusters, I have 2 of these clusters. They are large 8 passive attack damage while holding shield clusters. And both of them have advanced guard, which gives us 5% movement speed and 30% increased damage, attack damage. They give us martial prowess for attack damage, attack speed, accuracy. And then they also give us feed the fury, which gives you a lot of damage while leeching. Now you might be asking, well, how are you gonna leech? And the answer is quite simple. As soon as we get to a boss, I weapon swap, I pop Blood Rage, and you can see my life starts to degen immediately. Which means that I can leech back up there, and then I gain the damage from this Feed the Fury, which is 30 attack damage and 15 attack speed while leeching. And I gain that benefit twice. Now, another thing that helps with our leeching situation is the fact that I've linked my Sniper's Mark to Life Tap. And so as soon as I hit an enemy boss, immediately I mark it and it takes away 244 life. So that also helps to take away some life so we can start leeching. So that's how we gain full benefit from these nodes. These are pretty nice larges because you get movement speed and a lot of damage from them. And then from our mediums, I've decided to go for projectile damage mediums. Initially, I did play around with some crit mediums, but we went Secrets of Suffering, so crit doesn't really feel that good. So the mediums are Eye to Eye and Repeater. Now, Repeater is just damage and attack speed, whereas Eye to Eye is a lot of damage, but a ton of damage if you're close to the enemy. And if you stack 4 of these, one over here, one over here, one over here, and one over here, combined with point blank, you deal a ton of damage to an enemy when you're close to the enemy. So that's why, as you can see in the videos, I run up to the boss and we pretty much just one-shot the boss. And then over here, we do go Secrets of Suffering. This does help cap out our crit. If you can get enough crit chance without this, I don't recommend you go Secrets of Suffering. But as soon as we hit Brittle on a crit, the next shot almost always one-shots the boss. And the faster you go, the more currency you make. So I do think in my setup it's worth, but if you can get more crit, maybe you can change this out for a rare jewel or just not go Secrets of Suffering. Then for the rest of our jewels, I do have a Forbidden Flesh and a Forbidden Flame. I am using the Pathfinder's Ascendancy, Nature's Adrenaline, which does give you movement speed and attack speed during Flask effect. They were extremely cheap. I think I bought both for under an X each. So we have one up here and one here. And then for my Watcher's Eye, I have movement speed while affected by Grace, and cooldown recovery while affected by Haste. Cooldown recovery for movement skills. Now again, you can play around with the Watchers and this node down here and what you link to your phase run. But again, you just want 100% uptime on this while you're running to the boss. For the Ascendancy, we go with Raider because Raider gives you Onslaught permanently with Rapid Assault, which is 20% attack speed and movement speed in our case. And then thanks to Avatar of Chase, that is 100% increase Onslaught effect, which just further boosts our attack speed and movement speed. The 10% more chance to evade is also quite nice to get, but it's not that big. We mainly take this for the speed. Then we take Quartz Infusion, which gives us Spell Suppression. Like I mentioned earlier, if you want to cap Spell Suppression, that's really up to you. I don't think it's that important, but it is pretty simple as a Raider, so you can. But more importantly, we gain Phasing, which allows us to pass through enemies while we're running to the map boss. This might sound like it's not a big deal, but it is a very big deal. Because we're not killing enemies on our way to the boss, it's very easy to get stuck on an enemy. And this Ascendancy is really big, really, really nice to get. Great quality of life. And then up here, Avatar of the Veil, we pretty much only take this for the exposure. Unfortunately, I do not have a 100% chance to avoid elemental ailments, but you might be able to work it into your build. And then, like I said earlier, we do have the Pathfinder Ascendancy, Nature's Adrenaline as well. Okay, so now let's take a look at the gear that I use. I did go over and do a lot of testing with different pieces, but this is the final gear set that I'm happy with. So for our helm, we have a Devoto's Devotion with increased explosive concoction damage. Devoto's gives you attack speed, movement speed, and some stats. The main reason I've gone for this helm enchant is, well, because I tested the other ones. I tested Explosive Concoction, Area of Effect. So for those of you who don't know, Explosive Concoction can overlap. These explosions can overlap. So that's why scaling AoE on them is really good, because more overlaps means more damage. But because we are running Ashes and Explosive Concoction does have base AoE, the AoE from this helm felt less impactful than just getting increased damage. And so that's why I've decided to go for this one. I spent a lot of money making this helm, and it turns out that it just felt worse than this one. So that's why I've gone for this Devoto's. I think that's the best helm enchant. We'll go over an alternative in a second. Then I went for a Queen of the Forest. Queen of the Forest allows you to be really, really fast if you have enough evasion. With my flasks up, I currently have, if I weapon swap, about 60k evasion, which you can still squeeze in a little bit more to be a little bit faster, but that's what gives us a big part of our movement speed. I was lucky enough to get this +3 Queen of the Forest for, I think, 25x from someone. If you can't get a +3, I recommend you get either a +2 that affects Explosive Concoction, or you just get the +1 socketed, because we do run an Empower, and that'll then give Explosive Concoction 2 levels. Then we are using a Ashes of the Stars. The main reason I decided to go for Ashes instead of Omni is because Ashes gives 30% quality, and that means that our phase run, because phase run gives movement speed based off of quality, we gain a ton of speed because of the Ashes. So that's why I've gone for Ashes. The +1 level is also really nice for Explosive Concoction. But if this is something you want to test out, you might want to try Omniscience. I just like playing with Ashes a little bit more. It makes mana reservation efficiency easier. Then our rings. Our rings are mainly the slot that we use to cap res. So both of my rings have an absolute ton of res, life, and then also the crafted prefix, the -7 total mana cost, which is just to help us be able to afford Explosive Concoction. The skill does become quite expensive if we don't manage the cost. And then on this ring, we do have Elemental Weakness, because as you can see on my Ashes, I do have Anointed Whispers of Doom for an additional curse. If you're very rich, you could just buy a Corrupted Ashes with the additional curse implicit, but yeah, I wasn't going to pay that much for a boss rusher. So this ring, again, it's just life, resists, and then the -7 cost. For our gloves, these gloves give you stats, because like I mentioned earlier, we struggle on some stats, life, resistance, and then I do get increased damage with hits against chilled enemies. Yes, we are using Secrets of Suffering, so I cannot chill, but my skitterbots, they can still chill, so the enemies will be chilled, so we still get the increased damage from there. Then for the new implicits, I've decided to go for increase effect of our marks, because Sniper's Mark is a really big part of our damage. And then also the other implicit gives us Intimidate when we're near a unique enemy. Now usually it's not that nice to get these conditional implicits that require you to be near a unique, but because we're boss rushing, we're always going to be near a unique, and so that's why we have 50% increased chance to intimidate, or 50% chance to intimidate an enemy on hit, which is always going to be active when we're near a boss. Then for my boots, this is just movement speed. As much movement speed as you can. I have the movement speed enchant, I have the movement speed Exarch implicit, I have movement speed if you haven't been hit recently, life, resists, and like I mentioned earlier, I was able to cap spell suppression, so this is where I got some spell suppression. The Eater of Worlds implicit, as you can see, gives cooldown recovery for travel skills. Like I mentioned earlier, just be sure you have 100% phase run uptime. I kind of doubt that that is worth it at this point anymore. I could probably roll over that. Then for my belt, this is a really nice belt. It's a String of Servitude that gives me increased movement speed during Flask effect and close to 70 critical strike multiplier during Flask effect. This belt's really nice, and if you're thinking, well, I can't play this build because I won't find a belt like this, I was playing with this belt for the longest time, which gives me attack speed and movement speed, and then I tested critical strike chance and movement speed, and then I tested AoE and movement speed, but the main takeaway here is just that you'd want a String of Servitude with increased movement speed, preferably a max roll, to make you very, very fast. So that's the only mod you're looking for, and then whatever other mod you can find that helps you out, it's just going to be a nice little extra. Then we take a look at our weapons and offhands. So we have two setups. I have a weapon swap setup. This setup with the bubble is what I use for running, and then I weapon swap to a killing setup. So the running setup is an Ichimonji for aura effect with a Perpetua, which gives me 20% movement speed. And then when we switch, my main hand gets freed open, so I can use Explosive Concoction because you need to be unarmed for Explosive Concoction. And then the shield that I use while attacking the boss just gives me life and stats and some res. I did get some Avoid Elemental Ailment on here, but the meme is while you're running, that's when it matters to be ailment immune, and I'm not. So you can literally just get whatever on the shield. The stats don't even work because if I unallocate the strength up here, it works on the shield, but if I weapon swap, I can't wear half my gear. So that was an oversight on my part. Just get some life, maybe some resists. Currently, while I'm running, let me just put this note back. Currently, while I'm running, I'm not fully res capped, so you do want to be res capped while running. And then when you switch to your bossing setup with your weapon swap, you do also want to try and be res capped. So that's something that I could still try and work out, get a little bit more lightning res. But yeah, this shield, you can do whatever you want, maybe even get some damage from this. Then I think that's all of our gear. So now let's go over the flasks. Because we're using Explosive Concoction, we do need a Topaz Flask and we do need a Sapphire Flask. Now how they're rolled literally doesn't matter. I've even changed their key bindings so I don't manually press them myself. They're literally just there to get used when I attack with my skill. As you can see, it consumes them, and then Explosive Concoction adds a ton of flat damage when it's able to consume a charge. So you have these two flasks as kind of wasted flask slots, but they do add a lot of damage. Then for my two main flasks that I use while running, I have a Jade Flask and I have a Quicksilver Flask. Now the Jade Flask has increased evasion during Flask effect, and it also has the implicit that you roll on with Enkindling Orbs that give me increased Flask effect. So you want to boost the effect of this flask as much as you can, and the same with this flask. I have movement speed, increase effect, and on this one I was lucky enough to roll increase effect with the reduced duration. That could also be nice to hit on this one if you'd want to. I recommend you just buy these. They're not that expensive and they really make a big difference to your speed. Do remember to quality these up. You do want them to last as long as possible while running to a boss. And then I have an Enduring Mana Flask. The main reason is just that with all my auras up, even with all of our investment into reducing the cost, this is still a pretty expensive skill to use, and when I pop the flask, it helps with mana sustain. But apart from that, because I spam these 2 flasks while I run to a boss, often when I hit the boss, they might be empty, and this flask won't be empty, and so we gain the benefits from our belt, the Ascendancy, and everything that requires us to have a flask active. So that's why I have the Enduring Mana Flask. Okay, I see that this video is getting pretty long, so we'll try and be quick with the rest. For the gems, we have Skitterbots, or auras I should say. We have Skitterbots, Haste, Precision, and Grace. You want to get Grace, preferably level 21 for more evasion, and Precision you do want to get level 21, so you can be accuracy capped when you try and hit an enemy. You want 100% hit chance. Then our main 6th link, we have an Empower level 4, which gets boosted to a level 5 because of our chest. I have an Inspiration for elemental damage, crit, and reduced cost. If you run this flask, you don't really need the Inspiration. You could switch it out for something else. I just like it. I feel like it's a little bit of extra quality of life. Then I have Awaken Elemental Damage with attacks. If you get a level 5, this means that you're Reflect immune, and because we don't look at the map mods that we run, we just pick up the maps like they are and then run them. This is nice to be Reflect immune. I have a 2120 Explosive Concoction. You want to boost the level of Explosive Concoction as much as possible. It gives a lot of flat, which gives a lot of damage. If you don't want to go for Secrets of Suffering, there is an alt quality of Explosive Concoction which gives increased crit chance. So if you scale AoE somewhere else, you could get a ton of crit from the gem itself, but the base quality gives AoE, and like I explained earlier, Overlap's really good. Talking about Overlap, I linked this to GMP, which gives you more projectiles and greater volley. I went for Anomalous GMP just to help with the cost as well, reduces the cost a little bit. And so that's why we get all these projectiles when we attack once. You do want the overlap, you do want many projectiles, you do want them to be close when you attack, but you want their explosion to have a pretty big AoE. Then my phase run is a level 21, or it's a level 20 quality phase run. The quality is very important. I linked that to an Enhanced 4, which I then linked to an Anomalous Blood Rage, which gives me 7% chance to gain a Frenzy when I hit a unique enemy. Some boss fights I have all 3 frenzies, some boss fights I don't have a single frenzy, so a normal Blood Rage would also work. I don't think this Anomalous Blood Rage really gives you what it costs to get. So just using a normal frenzy or a normal Blood Rage, I should say, should be worth. It really depends on your budget. And then I also link both of these to an increased duration. So like I explained earlier, we get 100% phase rush uptime. Then I have a life tap support linked to a 21 or a 2020 Sniper's Mark. Sniper's Mark is massive in this build. I also link it to an Enhanced 4 and a Mark on Hit support. So this Sniper's Mark boosts our damage. It's so much of a damage boost from this mark. It is crazy. We do use a lot of Enhanced 4s. They aren't that expensive, but they do really benefit us quite a bit. Then we use a Phantasmal Ancestral Protector. Phantasmal Ancestral Protector gives you increased effect of the Ancestral Totem, and because of our quality here, and of course because of the Enhanced 4 we link it to, this gives us a massive DPS boost. And so earlier when we talked about a Helm enchant alternative, you could consider getting an enchant like this, which gives you 18% increased attack speed while the totem is active. I do believe that increasing the effect right here does scale this value as well. And then, like I said, the Enhanced 4 over here linked to a 20 quality portal. If you're going to be running hundreds of maps a day, you do want to use a portal gem instead of portal scrolls. I started out having a few thousand portal scrolls and now I only have 800 left, so do use a portal. And then finally for Pantheons, I've decided to go with the Soul of Brian King for reduce effect of chill while I'm running to the map boss. I just hate being chilled on chilled ground. You could change this to whatever. And then for the Minor God, I have the reduce effect of shock, but in certain maps I would like it to be Aberrath, which gives me unaffected by Burning Ground, and then the increased movement speed on Burning Ground. Because we don't check mods, we often get weird map mods or ground effects, so it really depends on you what you use here. I do think Aberrath is a pretty good option, but this helps a little bit with one-shots. And for bandits, I've decided to kill all the bandits for the extra 2 points, but helping Alera would also be nice for the crit multi and mana regen. And there we go. That's all you need to know to play a lightning-fast boss rusher. Sadly, I do believe that Ashes of Stars and boss rushing as a whole might be on the nerf list, so your time to try this out might be limited, but hey, if they decide not to nerf it, you now have a really good way of generating currency in future leagues. When doing this on stream, I was able to farm up something stupid like 20 Eater of World invitations in a day. Boss rushing is really, really good, and this build is just crazy fast. Like I said, I will link the Atlas tree and the map layouts in the description down below, but that's it from me. My name is Niz, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye. It's fine, we're going for 8% increase effect of fizz modifiers. These are 6.5x per try up to 8x per try, so Prage... No way!